Alright, now it's starting. Alright, so welcome everyone to the GM meeting that everyone forgot, including me. But thankfully, I remembered before the day ended. But not necessarily have any script to go on, but I do have a few general points. So, this GM meeting is a response to a few certain things that have been happening around this server. Uh, Regarding most events are mediocre, and players are mostly apathetic and dissatisfied. To the point where we get reports that people will just sometimes leave before events even start because they prefer gambling or using the server as some sort of VR chat than playing actual events. Now, you might be saying mid is not too bad, it's mediocre. Well, there is no. The, mid does not mean survival in the long run. It means slow, wiltering death, which has been happening. We always have to stay on either good or very good, otherwise, we will just slowly die. We have actually been slowly dying. I'm not saying our player count decrease has just been because of events, it's a variety of factors. Um, like, for example, summer ending and, the school season and work season starting, stuff like that. So people can't play as much, or people might be getting burnt out and they just need a little break. But also, it does not help events being meh. Now, I like to say that most GMs just need a little push in the right direction, as I've seen you guys make events, and I do think you guys have genuine. A lot of you have a good potential that just need a few tips of advice to get a lot better. But as to get better, we will be going over the things you have been doing. Have you guys been doing pretty good, and things that you have been doing pretty bad? So first things up is the actual taking of events. So you guys have actually been pretty consistent, mostly consistent at least, of making events, scheduling events. At well, besides the first one, you guys seem to nobody seems to ever want to take the first event, but um, scheduling events on time, not conflicting with each other. Events lasting how long they're supposed to last. They usually incidents like we had before where events would take 10 years or like to finish or would end extremely prematurely are not really a thing anymore. Sometimes they happen, but not as much as it was before. uh, Events are also, like I said, done rather frequently, so that's good. Always rather have mid events than no events. uh, because it's why people come on the server to play events. It's one of the core foundations of a server. So that's what you guys have been doing good. Um, Uniqueness. You guys, I think, have been doing a good job of making events sort of unique from each other. Um, Now, yeah, I'll get to this point later, but there have also been times where you guys like make the same type of event twice in a row. There's like one time where like, oh yeah, a guy made a heist event, and then the guy next to it makes a heist event, another heist event, which is, I mean, the idea was creative, and then someone did another same type of event again. Uh, but besides that, you guys have been pretty good in trying to become unique, using the server's lore to your advantage, and trying to be as creative as possible. So good job on that front. Now, you guys have also been following the event procedures mostly well, with in regards to event log and GM docs. They've mostly been satisfactory, and others have been outstanding. So good job on that regard as well. You've been following the galactic map well, and it seems most of you are pretty well versed in the lore and stuff as well. So good job on that front as well. Now we're gonna get into the bit of the complaints and the failings of your events most of the time. Of course, they vary from GM to GM, but I'm just talking broad strokes here. So main thing, well, I'm not gonna say main thing. Probably a combination of all these, but first things first is some people do not find the topics of events particularly interesting. Now, hopefully, with the new changes, like, the SRA actually trying the Blitzkrieg, and, you guys are able to take planets again and do more wide-scale events, hopefully that issue might be resolved. But even then, a lot of these event ideas, or not a lot, but, like, a good bit of them are just not really interesting at all. I don't want to point any specific examples, but, like, say your event idea out loud, and if you don't, from a player's view, if it doesn't sound like an event you want to play, it's probably an event that you don't want to run. If that makes sense. Hold on, someone said something in the GM break room. Let me see. Oh, yeah, it's fine, Mondo. Anyway, besides that, yeah, the event ideas just not up to scuff of other stuff. Some event ideas are rather creative that I've seen come out. Now, I would like to say there's a difference between being unique, but also unique does not translate into interesting. So I think that's where the confusion of that might come in. So when I gave you the compliment of being unique, yeah, oh, unique, you guys are not being generic or cliche, but also being unique does not guarantee making a good idea, if you will. But I read, just be careful about your event ideas. Also be careful, sometimes an event idea might look good on paper and completely fall flat on its ass in execution. Try to really envision how your event is going to play out in game and how players would react. That goes in RP and combat aspects. So for example, when it comes to RP stuff, a good rule of thumb is that players are usually around 50-50 when it comes to the serious skill, if you will. Kind of maybe a bit more on the not Minji, like, I don't want to say like Minji's side, just like, not serious, like just a little bit over, the non-serious skill. So you have to, if you want to do something, for example, RP related, you have to ease them in and make sure it, like, communicate with the player that it's going to be, RP related with combat in between, so they get immersed into the event. Because you have to realize that a lot of these players, if they're not doing passive RPs or simulations, they're physically not connected to the world or immersed at all. Which will, if they aren't, and you don't, like, ease them into an RP and communicate clearly that they're going to be doing RP or something RP heavy related, the RP is just, no matter how good it is going to fall flat on its ass, and it's not going to work. Because the players will just not take it seriously, for example. You always want to, and this goes for combat as well, the type of combat players will be doing. Is there going to be vehicles? You want to communicate well. If you know what you're doing, you can subvert expectations. But again, I would really only try subverting expectations if you know what you're doing. When I mean subverting expectations, I mean lying in your event document. Like, saying that there's going to be a lot of combat, and then it turns into a horror event because everyone's dead on the battlefield, and, like, it turns into a mystery horror event. Again, I would only do stuff like that if you really think you know what you're doing. What else? But yeah, in regards, hold on, someone typed. People tend to be chaotic if they sense funny. They do funny, but if they can sense serious, they will do it. If you force one person to stand for 10 minutes doing nothing, hold on, give me a sec. That's mommy.
What? God, I can't hear anything. I'm currently doing the event, and all I can hear is a droid.
What? No, I'm not, mommy. Mommy, go away, please. Please, oh my god, I'm saying. Okay, I'm back. I had to deal with family stuff. What were you saying? Someone was saying something. Okay, if no one else is... Anyway, I was gonna keep reading Mondo's thing. People tend to be chaotic. If they sense funny, they will do funny. But if they sense serious, they will do it. But if you force one person to stand for 10 minutes doing nothing while two people talk, they will be annoyed, obviously. That should be a staple given. If you're going to do RP heavy related things, you have to give other people to do other things. Your event cannot revolve just around one group of people because everyone else will dislike it. Those other groups of people... An event can have a general focus, like if you want to focus on the Jedi and have, like, it's going to be a Jedi-related event, that's fine, but the players, everyone else has to be able to do something, whether that be RP-related or combat-related. You always want to have some level of combat involved in your event, by the way, because there's just some people that do not want to do RP. And I know that might be counterintuitive considering we are an RP server, but this is also Gmod RP, where the term RP has been degraded to the ground from countless mediocre Star Wars RP servers that don't actually RP. But that is why you should always try to include some bit of combat in your events. But again, to sum up that general point, just really think about how your event will play out and think if it translates well into Star Wars RP. And just say it out loud. If it doesn't sound interesting and you don't think players will like playing it, then don't. Yeah. Next point moving on is event ratings. Now, a lot of you might be confused, as most of your events will sometimes get positive ratings. What you don't see is that there's probably many people who just leave before your event starts, or people who refuse to vote because they don't want to make you feel bad. But there have been many, many complaints of events just being meh or bad. A telltale sign is, again, the GM announcement, or not the GM announcement, the announcement saying that events are kind of mid. So just to clear up on confusion with that, people, when they like something, they'll tell you it directly. When they don't like something, they won't tell it to your face. They'll go to Wedge or me. So if you're wondering why this is a problem, well, that's why people just have not been telling you specifically. Because they just don't want confrontation or just feel bad about, criticizing you or whatever. Besides that, next point, that point was just to clarify why we're even having this meeting. Just to discuss stuff like that. Next point, next major complaint, if you will. Events lacking the idea being unique, but the event being so boring. What I mean by that is the objectives are either really boring or generic, and it's really simple. Now, having a simple event is not a bad thing. Sometimes, you just have to assault a base. Sometimes you just have to defend the base. There's nothing wrong against simple events. But it becomes a problem when every event, starts to become a simple event. Or the objectives are just, like, generic. If you're trying to have more complicated objectives. Now, my solution to this is, again, looking at from a player's perspective and thinking about how this would work with mechanics of the game. So will the player, realistically, enjoy escorting a caravan throughout a map and like escorting NPCs throughout the map? Now, if you're smart, you will think about how, if the map is AI noded, you will think about how the friendly NPCs follow the players with the NPC follower. And you will come to the realization, even with a good node, it's going to be extremely frustrating for players to, for example, escort NPCs along a map and will result in a horrible event. And probably the failure of the event. But not because the players were bad, but because the event mechanics were confused and the event idea not clearly thought out enough. Now, that does not mean the idea was bad, just wasn't thought out enough. A simple solution is, instead of NPCs, you could simply say an LVS vehicle is carrying the NPCs in a vehicle. And you can have an event character slowly drive, like, I don't know, a Juggernaut slowly throughout a map, and like you can GM and like spawn in enemies and stuff like that. Just because an idea at first think about it doesn't work doesn't mean there's workarounds or you know workarounds to make the idea work. You know. Give me a sec. It's not true. But anyway, another thing is is GMs not being flexible in regards to everything. Now, you have to understand when you sign up for this job, you're literally signing up to make events, but also to be flexible. If you're not able to be flexible, then you're not going to get too far into being GM. That goes in mechanics, writing, and scheduling. You can't expect scheduled events to always work out because events are not a linear thing. They're not like a meeting, like this meeting, where it has like a set like timetable to end and start. Actually, this meeting doesn't have a start or end table, but just using a real life example. Like, events are free flowing. Sometimes they end prematurely, sometimes they start. GMs are expected to go with the flow in regards to that. That doesn't just go with GM scheduling, but also with their event ideas. Like I said, you can't afford to be stubborn. If your event idea and you're thinking about this, or if someone's telling you that it might not work, and you're ignoring their warnings, and you still go on trying to do the idea, and if the idea fails, then you're not being flexible. And worst of all, if it's failing and you're failing to adapt to the current situation, then you're a failure of a GM. Okay? It's just terrible.
If I may, the best way to word it is
Yeah.
There's two ways you can be a GM. And I always use kids like playing with like action figures.
Yeah.
Don't be that kid who goes, no, you can't play with my toys this way. Because you're making the events for the players. So if the players like find a way to, I guess, outsmart you, like that's probably good on them for being engaged enough to think about that kind of stuff. And B, we are literally making a sandbox storyline something for players to interact and find solutions or alternative means to reaching their goals rather than just guns blazing.
I'll read your thing in a second, Mondo. For example, an example of players outsmarting the GM, for example, was during the major event when Doom, along with others, found a missile inside the base that they wanted to use against Dink and his fleet. Now, a bad GM would say, no, you are not allowed to do this because the missile is stupid and I didn't plan enough and I'm not, I'm a failure and can't adapt to the situation. That's what a bad GM would do. A good GM would go with the flow and say, okay, well, actually, let me list another bad version of a GM. A bad GM is way too accommodating as well and say, okay, you fire the missile, Dink dies, the entire Separatist fleet dies, and the event is cut early. You can't also be overly accommodating to players as well. There has to be a balance between adaptability, but also, things can't get too crazy sometimes. Now, a good GM, like I was saying, would strike a balance of both. So, for example, in the event yesterday, when Doom did find that big rocket, I gave him, the opportunity to explode, to make the Separatist fleet retreat. But also, I didn't make them do it immediately. I told them it would take a while, and that players would have to defend, the silo to win the event, essentially. You go with the flow, but you also don't, don't be, overly accommodating. Events are for the players, but also sometimes what players want are so stupid or, crazy. remember, players voted to like join Deathwatch and set the Confederacy, despite the Confederacy crushing us the day before. Sometimes democracy does not work, and that's why we need a dictatorship. That's what I'm saying. But yeah. But that doesn't mean just to strike down every idea that the players have or outsmart you. You should be able to adapt. Anyway, don't punish what Mondo says. Don't punish people creativity from don't punish people creativity from players during events like the droid we have that can hack. Allow him and adapt. Sentence was a bit broken, but yeah, I understand your sentiment. It's nice to see people say my event was good in chat before we switch maps. Give me a second. Whew. Anyway. Yeah, I know, man. Okay. Venator, thank you for letting us know. I would like to say, I still want to continue this, though. So hopefully you come back fast, but, I'd like to remind you that as a GM, you're not making your event for as a self-gratification or power trip. You're making these events for the players. Yeah, I have to consider that this is a voluntary position, and that you're not here to either stroke your own ego or do anything of that sort. This is to serve the player. If I could make an analogy, you're a game designer. A good game designer does not like make a level extremely hard or just for themselves. They make it for the player to enjoy. Events are not for the GM, they're for the player, if that makes sense. So if you're having fun killing the players over and over again, but the players are not having fun, then there's a problem. There has to be like the players come first, if you will. Now that does not mean that you can't have events where the players get slaughtered. There's been plenty of events where players get slaughtered, but they completely enjoyed the event. But, that has to be handled delicately and, competently, if you will. Enemy spawn need to be managed more. Yeah. Also, that what Doom said is correct. Enemy types need to be more focused on. So, for example, a while ago there was an event where the GM spawned in hordes of Death Troopers. Now, can I just say that is retarded? Why would there be an army of Death Troopers? They're squads, they're special commandos. There would not be an army of Death Troopers. 2, Death Troopers are super OP, and if there's a lot of them, it could be genuinely unfun to fight against. Notice the types of enemies you're spawning. Ideally, you want to have a variety of events or of enemies for players to fight, and you scale the types of enemies depending on the difficulty of your event. All right, that does
No.
Yeah, what was that? Anyway, so for example, if you wanted to make a CIS event, and for let's say it's harder just hard difficulty. Let's say you want to use just basic battle droids. Just spam basic battle droids. Maybe a few B2s, droidicas, stuff like that. Maybe if higher difficulties, like in harder difficulties, you only want to use heavy B1s because they can survive longer and put out more damage. You maybe want to use, tastefully, a few B2 Rocketeers. You only want to use a few of them, not armies of them, because they can get really annoying to fight against. A few spider droids. If it's an open field, maybe you can use a lot of spider droids, but this goes for every faction. The USMJ, for example, USMJ doesn't have too much mob variety, if you will, but they have riot soldiers that can tank more damage and charge at players. There's specialist soldiers that I think only fire grenades or something like that. Every event, every NPC has a set purpose to it, and we sadly sometimes see GMs using mob types completely wrong, if you will. So just keep in mind the types of events, or not types of events, types of NPCs that you're spawning, and that it's an appropriate, NPC for the difficulty and event. Now I will say there is some NPCs that their entire purpose is just to be a reskin. Like there's a few Imperial soldiers that are just Navy versions of this NPC or green version of this or stuff like that. I'm pretty sure the USMJ has a few like that. So yeah. Let me see, another person made a comment. Yeah, that's what I was just saying. Half a USMJ lineup is different camouflage. But yeah, if you need to go into Sandbox and test with the NPCs, do that. What else is another complaint? General rules and tips. I've seen GMs do this really often. Spawn things in stages. Do not spawn everything at once and lag the entire server, because that's how you have a really unfun event. You want to spawn things in stages. Ideally, if the map is not too big, you want to spawn all your dupes first, and then a few the NPCs at the beginning, along with entities that that involve the event. And then as players progress, you want to keep spawning things ahead of them to save on the lag. Also, you just want to do that sometimes in general, because sometimes maps will have nav meshes and NPCs will just move by themselves to the players, overwhelming them and annihilating them. So that is something you want to keep into account. Regards to dupes, try to use dupes more often. They really bring life. I know some GMs love you to use the dupes, others just don't use dupes as often. I would like to reiterate, dupes make it a lot more interesting to play an event. It's not interesting to be in an empty field and fire at NPCs that can't even hit you from a mile away. That's not really fun gameplay. Fun gameplay is trying to get to their cover, using cover, dodging using walls to your advantage, stuff like that. That is more fun gameplay and adds more dynamics to events. Let me see comments. I only see a few GMs using NPC Spawn Creator. Can you touch on that? Isn't NPC Spawn Creator... Yeah, they're intentionally supposed to be cracked out. They're specifically made for big fields like that, so players can actually have something to fight against. If you're actually just something to touch on, if you're using specialists, use them tastefully. They're supposed to just be They're supposed to be snipers, hence why they're deadly. Only use a few of them. Never spam them never spam them. NPC Spawn Creator, isn't that the thing where you spawn multiple NPCs at once, like in a formation, or is that like a spawn? Like it continuously spawns. Oh, that, okay. Personally, I haven't used it myself, but I mean, I could see the tool being a lot useful. But I think that's a general issue, just more overall. There's a lot of tools in the game that are at our disposal, guys. There's a lot of things that sometimes certain GMs will use a lot, other GMs will completely neglect. But there's a lot. For example, like Reaper just mentioned, the NPC Spawn Creator. Like, you can spawn NPCs over time. There's a lot of things. There's effects. There's ladders, for example, that you can help. There's there's bombs. There's a lot of stuff that you can use to make your events cooler. So just maybe next time, just load up single player and then look at the tool sections, entities, play around with it, and see how you can envision your events with that. Besides that, let's see. Any other? I'm thinking of the other complaints. So far we have touched on try not to be an egomaniac when it comes to events. Events should be for players. Try to be flexible, because if you're not flexible, you're a bad game master. You have to also think, we also went over about, how to test event ideas, really think through if your event idea can work, if it can apply to a game, and how a player might be, play through your event, if it's fun or not, or if it's interesting. So I think that's most of the points that I wanted to bring over, at least with the complaint side of things. But yeah, those are just really the most common things that I've been, you know, told that GMs are really struggling with, which is lack of flexibility, event ideas just being too boring, maybe unique, but just like unique, but also just executed poorly or just not interesting. Which yes, they can be both, or that events are just so basic in objective wise. Like that's another thing. Just give players more to do. Like they can handle more complicated things. It just doesn't always have to be basic bare bones objectives. Although there's nothing wrong with again doing an event where it's basic. But I don't want to retrot on the point I've already said. Does anyone have any questions?
No.
Yes, but sometimes if players don't understand what they're doing, it's of two things. Is that players are stupid and didn't pay attention towards the briefing, or you're failing as a GM and you didn't explain it properly. Which is also, now that I'm talking about it, is a reminder regarding planetary commanders. Now, I've gotten a lot of complaints that sometimes GMs will just explain their event poorly. So maybe it's not the players being stupid, maybe your event documents are just not exactly explanatory. So, for example, look at your own event docs. If they're less than like 3 sentences, then something went wrong, probably. Unless it's extremely simple. Your event doc ideally should be what the players know. Now, I've gotten complaints that sometimes people who missed the briefing or didn't understand the briefing will look at the event doc and they get even more confused than they were before. That is a complete failure of the GM's part trying to communicate what they're trying to do. FYI. To fix this, either send it to Revenant or me, and we can read over and judge how good an event doc is. A good rule of thumb is that your event doc should explain why is the event happening, why we are doing this, what objectives there is going to be, what's the mission objective overall, what are some hostile things we might encounter, or the obstacles we might face that might block us towards our destined goal, and certain more relevant information that regards to the event. I've seen event docs where it just explains why we're doing it, and then PCs are just supposed to guess what their mission objective is, and they're completely in the dark. I've seen event docs where there is no lore explanation, and it's just the objectives, and so players are just wondering what the hell they're doing this, and what's the point of it all. And then, yeah. Players are dumb, but also sometimes GMs are just completely off the ball, and I have seen it before. Event docs, if your event doc is not satisfactory, then it's likely your event is going to be a confused mess. We have event docs for a reason. They're not just to inform players who are late or just to read out during briefings. They're to also form your thoughts about an event and how you're going to communicate that to players. So, good rule of thumb, have your event doc be around a few 4 to 5 sentences explaining whys, hows, and what's of your events, if you will. Again, I can't believe I'm saying this, but who, what, where, then why was it then? I don't know, I'm probably getting that wrong. If any of you know what I'm talking about, you're a gamer. But yeah. Besides that, just really try to work on your event docs more and try to communicate to players more. You have to really be in their face to understand something, especially lore implication wise. Don't try to, yeah. So if you're in a call with the PC and they ask you a question, I'm going to clarify this now. What the relationship between a GM and a PC. GMs are not babysitters. Your job is not to be a planetary commander for the planetary commander, because I've seen events where the PC, okay, what do I do? What's the purpose of my life? Where am I supposed to go? How am I supposed to do this? What way do you want me to do this? How do I breathe? That is not what GMs are supposed to do. GMs are supposed to state the objectives if the planetary, commander asks, and to reiterate certain things if the planetary commander, has a question, like, oh, can I do this? Can I do that? And you're supposed to answer their questions. You're not supposed to be planetary commander for them. Okay? They've been briefed about that as well in the past as well, so should not be happening. But try to explain. If they forget, they forget. Just try to explain the objectives concisely and intricately. And also, when you're getting into a call, tell them not to deafen and just to mute themselves. But also, there's a reason why they deafen, and it's usually because in-game there's a lot of shit going on, and GM and the Discord is being too loud. Try to have event channels, pretty clear to VC. You guys shouldn't be, talking about, I don't know, what your favorite food is in event channel, okay? You're supposed to be focusing on the event. That's why it's a common cause for people to deafen themselves in the event channel. So tell them not to deafen and promise that you won't talk that much unless it's regarding to the event. Ugh. But that's my spiel with that. Any other questions? How many events to capture a world? I would say a good 2 to 3, 4, stuff like that. I made it easier for you guys because the planets nearby we have already negotiated with, so we can skip the negotiation parts because the SRA can't just conquer a planet without going through bureaucracy for obvious reasons. In announcements, I think, I tell you exactly what planets are willing to join the SRA and what planets just want their own independence. If they're not listed, then you're going to have to try to, you have to rationalize why the hell a planet is going to be joining us. And how we're going... And sometimes the planet is not going to be fully with the SRA. For example, I think Goliath is a hardcore Confederate world. So when we're taking that, you better think of some way to deal with their patriotism. Otherwise, Goliath is going to be, a thorn on the SRA side if you take it over. Or maybe you'll do that intentionally. Maybe you intentionally just, brush over negotiations and forcefully take their world in order to do future events on Goliath because there's civil unrest going on and stuff like that. Anyway, any questions? That was basically my main spiels that I wanted to go over. I hope you guys can take the criticism to heart. This meeting's been going on for 30 minutes or so. Image tool is pretty rad. But if no one else has anything to say, then just remember my points. Be flexible, be precise, and have a plan to kill anyone you meet. No. Okay, so be flexible, make event docs properly, follow the GM procedures well, make sure your event idea is unique but also not boring, and make sure if envisioning through players' eyes, it'll be entertaining for them to play. And I probably forgot a point. Make sure to communicate your objectives well to Planetary Commander and not to baby Planetary Commanders. But also, don't be a jerk to Planetary Commanders also. That was also a complaint that sometimes GMs would just be, annoyed at them. Another thing to remember, events are not for self-gratification. They're for the players. You're here to serve the players. And players, not yourself. Anyway, yeah, those are the main points. So if no one else has any questions, Doom, you don't have anything you want to add? Nothing you want to add? Well, if no one else has anything to add, then I'd say this meeting is adjourned. You are free to leave.
Woo.
I expect better results in the coming week, and one day next to the announcement ping, I'll be able to, we'll get a lot more goods than mediocre, because a server that's mediocre is a server that's destined to die. And honestly, most servers would be dead by now. The only thing that's keeping us alive is our, the gimmick of our lore being so unique and all the custom workshop add-ons and stuff like that. And the event ideas in general. But if one of our core foundations start rotting away, we're dead. So, now I will be exiting this call and returning to what the hell ever I was doing before I came here. You will all have a real good day here. Now you're here. Oh yeah, remember, events are not for self-aggrandizing. For real, some of you have to cut it out with the same event idea trope that you do time and time again. Players will get sick of it, alright? Why I personally only do, like, a certain chain of events, kind of 1 or 2 times or 3 times. Like, I don't have, for example, what's a character I made? I don't have Zero W appear in every event, for example. Even if players loves the character Zero W, I don't want to become Disney and like, oh, here's Zero W! Make +1 my event. You don't want to become Disney and like start shoehorning in characters or event tropes because players quote-unquote love them, because that's going to sour their taste eventually over time real fast. Anyway, that was my final point. Now I bid you all adieu. You're free all to leave. Oh, no.
Nuh-uh.
Excuse me, you're supposed to leave. And I'm supposed to lord over my Game Master break room.
No.
Train map. You forgot the name of the train map.
I forgot that, yeah, it's not in the planet map log, so. I crashed, so I couldn't find it.
That is an L.
Okay, I'm back.
Oh, Doom.
Bro.
Yeah, wait.
What?
Oh, anyway, yeah, it's about to be over. I mean, Doom, since you're back, do you have any final words you want to say?
I think some people sometimes mistake the scale of difficulty when they're planning things. Either through not considering all of the factors, like the amount of players on what faction we're going to be fighting, the map we're using, things like that. And I think there's good diversity in like stylistic choices for events, like main objective and like end goals. But something that I don't get stuck in a rut of, I made a storyline, this is the only thing that I'm running, are events in this storyline.
Oh, that's what I was
right
just
now.
saying, yeah. Like
Yeah.
Doom is saying, do not get stuck on a single event idea. For example, yeah.
I mean this lovingly, but Dusk really likes this Knights of Knee thing that he's got going on, and I don't understand any of it because he typically runs them, and I'm like either not on the server or whatever. But I don't understand the storyline.
Well, basically,
just...
just to abridge it, it's like an ancient cult that basically wants to. They're like fanatic purifiers from Stellaris, essentially. They want to destroy every faction and like rebuild their god.
But they're allies with us as of like yesterday.
They
or
are?
some shit? I don't know. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. I don't understand it.
Guys, also remember to read event logs. I've actually been skipping out on event logs due to how busy I've been getting, but really, you should try to read every event log that you can. Remember to react with the eyeball emoji if you've read it, so I can see that you read it.
I will start reading all of the event logs, and reacting to them as well. Now that I'm senior, I will be going through all the event logs and making sure things are logical. I will maybe have a more delicate approach than our dear beloved Dink when it comes to asking questions.
I will not be delicate.
Something else that and I know we've been kind of already touched on this, but with the way enemy spawns are happening, either through the amounts of enemies or what makes sense for the area you're in. Example, if we're in a map with a lot of long range open areas, sure, you can have snipers. You can do like platoons and stuff, which again, think about it in like a militant aspect. You can do like a force of like all B2s, but you should be intermixing other droids in there. Like B1s are the main chaff of the CIS. So for example, if you're doing like a big like brigade worth of units on the ground, there should be a lot of B1s, some B2s, a couple command droids like the B1 commanders. Don't throw commandos in there because commandos are like.
Yeah, we already went this over with every.
Okay.
Wait, I went over this with all of them already. Like that,
Okay.
you should really diversify and like. But also another thing that you were talking about earlier, balancing is just not. Balancing is just not in regards to NPCs, but also your map, like the map that we're going to be using. If the enemy have vehicles, if we have vehicles, what gimmicks that the GMs have given us, the objectives, how many lives we have. All of this and the player count, all of those are factors that go to difficulty. And, like, really consider, like, what you're going to be... I know player count is probably the thing least that you can do about, but, like, remember, this is also goes to thing about being flexibility. Let's say if you were beginning an event with only, like, 12 people, but then suddenly it's 21 people. Adjust your event
in real time. Yeah.
Adjust your event to those 21 people, but don't go overboard till like you're into another difficulty. Go, like, scale your event to. I know it's like a lot harder than just saying scale your event. Obviously, there's a lot of factors and experience that you have to go through.
The easiest way to break it down is if you're doing our average pop of like 15 players right now. If you are running an event and you have the average amount of players, which is like around 15 at the moment, we go, okay, if I'm running a harder level event, what is something challenging for this amount of people? What can I do to utilize not only the space, but all of the people that are online to make them feel like they're all getting a piece of the action, something that makes them all feel like they're included, something that's engaging. And then if more people end up joining, you can increase that volume just based off of number of people. So the tab menu is your friend, not only for the death counters and that sort of stuff, but it will also tell you where you're at and whether or not you need to scale it down too. Because if people are leaving or like crashing, that difficulty should scale again to the amount of people that are currently on the server. And clearly exclude yourself or like Wedge if he's cadet AFK and spawn, like count the active players.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Also, we have to something about drones that's driving me crazy right now. The fucking weird little tuning fork, like the standard like bombing drone, whatever, the one that does the big missile strike.
Yeah.
NPCs that have ranged weapons or like vehicles.
No, yeah. This is a bug.
If they catch a whiff of that, they will do anything in their power to make sure that thing gets out of the air before they look at any of the players on the ground.
Yeah, be careful, guys. Sometimes, like, allowing drones could literally, like, mess up your event entirely, and NPCs will just look up at the sky. If you're allowing drones, you have to have a way for drones to die. Either that being enemy aircraft or event characters shooting them down. They can't be up, uncontested.
Also, if people like Kinch and Tachanka run up the death counter, that's on them. Do not pity the main force for someone wanting to be a berserker and suffering those consequences.
Well, I mean, if they run in and die many times, I mean, it depends if they're like at the same. I mean, there's two arguments of this. There's like you shouldn't count the deaths because like what's his face? You shouldn't count the deaths because they're kind of ruining it for everyone else. But also at the same time, they're dying,
That is-
and it's
that
it's
is
on them,
every commander's job to manage their forces.
and yeah. So really,
And
if
if
you
they
see a
want to not
person,
listen, they need to deal with those repercussions.
like for example,
in
there
any
was an
way.
event with Alaska, and oh my god, I mean, people were dying a lot during that event because it was a more difficult event. But Alaska really loved, even ignoring orders from command. He ran in, died so many times to a hilarious degree, to the point where I'm surprised that, because by the time where he basically almost caused the SRA to single-handedly lose, and to lose Antigua, because this was the event where Antigua was being introduced.
Fracture, I'm going to invalidate an amount of those deaths because of the factor of the map itself. No offense.
No. I was talking about the Mondos thing, but like 11 of those were only from the 21st.
But yeah, if a player, unless that player is intentionally getting themselves killed, you see them, they're not even like firing, they're just running in and getting themselves killed. For example, I was looking at Tachanka. He was being a berserker, and he was shotgunning people, and when he did take too much damage, he tried to take cover, but, you know, you can only fight 700 droids by yourself, and, like, he's thinking he's John Wick. I mean, that death, when he died, it's a death well deserved. He tried, he fought, he died.
Which I get the Berserker class is fun, but yesterday during your event, I think he ended that event with like close to 30 deaths.
Now, to be fair, deaths on that event were a bit scuffed because spawns were a bit scuffed.
Because
and
a lot
sometimes-
of stuff. Yeah. And like
And also, they died a bunch before the goddamn event started. Like,
no, exactly. So always remember to take into account deaths before the event and minus those as
Yeah.
well.
But remember, you shouldn't really pity the SRA if they fuck up a lot. Sure,
No.
there's times when it's fair to like give them a break because factors outside of their control mess with them, and sure, but like
But if they're being dumb, they're being dumb.
yeah, don't reward stupidity, because players have shown that they can fight well when after repeated failures they do improve. But if you reward their sloppiness, they're not going to improve. Or, like, they'll think that they can just cruise on any event and do whatever and they still could win. No, they have to make sure that there's a real element for defeat or victory. Anything else? Want to include Mr. Doom?
I do want to include at some point, probably not tomorrow, but on Monday. I'm going to be taking slot 2 on Monday. Like I'm announcing that now to everyone here because these are like our primarily most active GMs. I'm going to be taking the event slot 2 on Monday, and I'm going to be running.
You can keep talking.
I'm going to run a space battle event using the new fleet system, and I would like an assistant GM for that. So if anyone will be available at that time,
I'm back.
Nope.
that'd be greatly appreciated.
Alright, sorry, Doom. I missed all because I was talking to my family.
Oh, I'm just saying I want to run a test of the new fleet combat proposal during an event on Monday, and I was saying I would need an assistant GM for that. It was more of just like a public announcement for that.
Oh, okay. With the fleet thing, I was DMing people, and
A lot of people
have
like it. Dusk doesn't
There's-
quite like it, and I don't care about Dusk's opinion.
no, not
as much
about the
in
old.
that-
A lot about the old system. I was talking about. Like, people are rather conflicted about the old system, but I think I saw
It's
your
just-
doc for a little bit. I mean, my concern is that your system does not work because it can't, unless you're gonna edit, because we have custom ships that are not Star Wars related at all, and that require
I know, and
unique
they
stuff.
have custom cards for that. I'm just saying that is the proof of concept document. That is ships
mean,
that I
I'm
know
eager-
that we can use.
I
I
mean,
know we have.
if we do adopt your system, I'd probably want to edit it a bit so it fits more in line with what's his face, the power structure, because a lot of fleet members are a bit used to, because I'm pretty sure in this new system a lot of powers, like the powers of individual ships have like changed or whatnot, and I would like to try to balance it.
Define, like, I guess elaborate on like what ships.
Well, for example, well, I mean, I wasn't looking at specific, but I can imagine since you're using another thing from a card. We're kind of derailing, but give me a sec. Since you're using a thing from another source material, I'm like imagining maybe in that source material, vendors are a lot weaker or stronger, and like I want to try to keep the same balance.
Those are the official Star Wars canon like power ratings of ships, which is why some of them have different amounts of guns and health, etc.
Oh yeah, but we want to use the what's this face? The Empire at War. That's what if you didn't know the
We
ship.
don't, because the current Empire at War system is illegible. It's just a bunch of different colored lines and symbols that mean nothing to people if they aren't familiar with Empire at War.
Well, I mean, the lines are again.
No,
it's
no.
textual.
I'm saying I've individually spoken to several fleet members, and the only person who had any pushback suggestions on the system that the doc I sent them was Dusk. Gecko earlier said, "This gives me a boner to actually do fleet things," and I quote. That was earlier in the event channel today.
What an elegant way to put such
I know.
things. But
I'm just saying, like, just because it maybe changes the way we write things doesn't mean it doesn't have to change the way we write things,
Sure.
and we can adjust those in real time. Like that's just a thing for GMs to consider. Like again, that's just the base like idea document, and it's something that GMs will have to use too, which is why I'm bringing it up here.
oh, someone left. Oh, Fracture left. Well, the me and GM meeting was over.
Do I still have to be here?
Well, we got
Is this
sidetracked,
the-
but is there any other GM related things that we want to talk about?
That was GM related. It wasn't completely off topic.
I mean, yeah, it wasn't. I will say we do adopt that system. I will mess it up on purpose. No, I will. I do want to
Yeah, that's fine.
edit it and stuff. And also, I do want to include certain like system because we're
Well,
working
it's
on a
like
system based.
they're like in the current document for that. There's like a shit ton of stuff from like a faction I've never heard of.
Oh, you mean the USMJ? Oh wait, no, the Raiders.
Raiders.
Yeah, we have
there
not
are,
been-
like
that's-
4 pages dedicated to those guys and a bunch of ships, and I've never fucking seen them.
Sadly, we
Yeah,
actually
no,
we
they don't
actually
exist.
have used some of their ships, and previous other GMs have used some of their ships. Sadly, we have not been able to have a chance because I thought we were going to break out a lot sooner. I was completely wrong. But actually, if you look, the Raiders are not too far. They're like, if we get Ryloth, they're one jump away from their territory. We can finally, mess around with them, stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
we will be able to meet Raiders. If you want to look at the faction info, it gives them a basic summary of what they are. Anything else GM related before I truly conclude this meeting?
Please,
Please what?
please conclude the meeting.
Maple, did
Are they-
you learn a lot of valuable things from this meeting?
I was gone to eat dinner for most of it, so. But I'll
Well,
watch the recording if you posted.
Yes, I will post a recording. Which, if you've joined late, you can see the earlier bits of the recording what you missed.
Well,
Well-
I think I missed like the entire conversation I had with Doom, or with Revenant. So I don't think it was
It was just talking about.
Uh, Yes, it wasn't that important. It's okay. It wasn't that big of a deal that I missed it. It's alright.
All right. Anyway, if no one else has anything to say, this meeting is concluded. You may truly.
I have
wait.
a question about upcoming planetary conquest stuff, but that can be a private question. It doesn't have to.
Yeah, just DM me. I gotta go eat right now, and I'll answer your DM. All right.
No problem.
Right. See you around, guys.